Mars has always been the planet that fuels our wildest imaginations. But what if I told you some of the strangest discoveries there aren't from science fiction? They're real, from eerie formations that look sculpted by unseen hands to objects that defy simple explanation. The red planet has been hiding secrets in plain sight. Thanks to decades of rover missions and orbiting eyes in the sky, we've uncovered anomalies that even scientists struggle to explain. So buckle up, because today we're counting down 30 of the most bizarre, head-scratching things ever spotted on Mars. And trust me, some of these will make you do a double take. One of the most enduring enigmas on Mars began with a single photograph, the so-called face on Mars. In 1976, NASA Viking 1 orbiter snapped an image of the Cydonia region, revealing what looked unmistakably like a giant human face staring up at the cosmos. With its symmetrical eyes, nose, and even a faint suggestion of a mouth, the formation sparked wild theories. Was it a monument left by an ancient civilization? A calling card from extraterrestrials? The photo ignited imaginations worldwide, becoming an instant legend. But science often has a way of tempering fantasy. Decades later, higher-resolution cameras on missions like Mars Global Surveyor captured the same formation in crisp detail, revealing it to be nothing more than a wind-eroded mesa, a natural rock formation shaped by time and Martian weather. Shadows and camera angles had conspired to create an illusion of something far more extraordinary. Yet, despite the official explanations, the face on Mars endures as more than just a geological feature. It's a cultural touchstone. It represents our eternal desire to find meaning in the unknown, to see ourselves reflected in the vast emptiness of space. Even now, conspiracy theorists and armchair explorers revisit the image, searching for hidden truths. And that's the real magic of it. Sometimes mysteries aren't about what's really there, but what they make us imagine. If the face on Mars was a cosmic prank of light and shadows, then the so-called Martian blueberries are the real deal, tiny, iron-rich spheres scattered across the planet's surface like nature's own ball bearings. When NASA Opportunity rover stumbled upon them in 2004, these curious formations looked so much like blueberries spilled on the ground that scientists nicknamed them on the spot. But make no mistake, these aren't remnants of some intergalactic breakfast. They're hematite concretions formed over billions of years through a process that screams one thing: water. Here's how it works. On Earth, similar tiny spheres form when mineral-rich water percolates through rock, depositing layers of iron oxide that eventually harden into pebble-like balls. Martian blueberries tell the same story, just on a planet we once thought was bone dry. Their presence was one of the first smoking guns that ancient Mars wasn't the barren wasteland we see today. Instead, it likely had lakes, rivers, or even vast groundwater systems where these hematite seeds could slowly grow. What's fascinating is how such small things carry enormous weight. These blueberries didn't just hint at water, they helped rewrite Mars' entire history. Later discoveries of clay minerals and dried-up riverbeds only cemented the idea, but those little iron orbs were the first whispers of a wetter, potentially habitable past. And they're still teaching us. Some appear clustered in ways that suggest flowing water carried them, while others sit embedded in rock-like fossils of ancient puddles. So next time you picture Mars, don't just envision a rusty desert. Imagine it dotted with these miniature time capsules, each one a raindrop's legacy frozen in iron. Because sometimes the smallest clues hold the biggest secrets. Just when we thought Mars couldn't get weirder, Opportunity rover served up a cosmic pastry, the infamous jelly donut rock. One day in 2014, mission scientists were reviewing routine images when they spotted it. A small, pale stone with a dark center, sitting conspicuously on the barren terrain. The strangest part, it hadn't been there in photos taken just days before. NASA's explanation was as practical as it gets. the rover's wheels had likely kicked up a rock fragment, flipping it into view. But this wasn't just any space debris. Spectrometer readings revealed the rock, nicknamed Pinnacle Island, was packed with sulfur, magnesium, and manganese elements that suggested it had been sheltered from Mars' harsh surface conditions before its sudden debut. Some researchers even speculated it might have been ejected from an underground layer, offering a rare peek at the planet's hidden chemistry. Yet, like so many Martian mysteries, this one kept nagging. Why did the rock's composition differ so dramatically from its surroundings? Could there be more fragments like it hidden beneath the dust? The jelly donut became a tiny enigma, half geological fluke, half tantalizing clue. It reminds us that even after decades of exploration, Mars still has tricks up its sleeve. Every flipped stone might rewrite a chapter of its story, or at least give us a delicious cosmic mystery to chew on. One of the most visually striking landscapes ever seen on Mars resembles something straight out of medieval legend, the so-called dragon scales of Mount Sharp. When NASA Curiosity rover beamed back images of this terrain in 2018, scientists and space fans alike did a double take. The ground looked like it was covered in massive, overlapping plates, each one textured like the armored hide of some colossal, long-lost beast. But before we start drafting fantasy novels, the science behind these formations is just as fascinating as their appearance. Researchers believe the scaly pattern could be the fossilized remains of ancient mud cracks billions of years old, preserved as the sediment hardened into rock. Alternatively, some suggest it might be evidence of past volcanic activity, where cooling lava fractured into these eerie reptilian tiles. What makes this site truly remarkable is how time has amplified its strangeness. Wind erosion has sculpted and undercut the plates, giving them that dramatic, lifted edge look, almost as if they're ready to snap shut. And while we know logically that no dragons ever roamed Mars, standing at this spot would feel like walking across the spine of a petrified titan. This isn't just about cool visuals, though. The dragon scales offer another puzzle piece in understanding Mars' wet past. If these are fossilized mud cracks, they'd hint at cycles of flooding and drying, an environment where life, at least in theory, could have gained a foothold. So while we won't find actual dragon bones here, what we are uncovering might be just as transformative. A portrait of a world that once breathed, cracked, and shifted in ways not so different from our own. Of all the strange sights Curiosity has beamed back from Mars, few sparked as much instant speculation as the so-called doorway photographed in 2022. Nestled into a rocky outcrop was a near-perfect rectangular crevice, so precisely shaped it looked like something straight out of an ancient sci-fi movie set. Social media erupted. Had we finally found evidence of Martian architecture, a hidden entrance to some underground network? Geologists, however, saw something far more familiar. Close analysis revealed this was a textbook example of cross-cutting fractures, natural stress cracks in rock layers that often form clean, geometric shapes. On Earth, we see similar formations in places like Utah's canyonlands or Scotland's coastal cliffs. What made this Martian version so striking was perspective. With no trees, buildings, or human-scale references, the modest crevice, just a few centimeters tall, appeared monumentally large, a trick of the camera and our own pattern-seeking brains. Yet, even with the science settled, there's something undeniably magnetic about this little fracture. It encapsulates why Mars continues to captivate us. Our minds stubbornly cling to the possibility of intentional design, not because we lack critical thinking, but because the alternative is almost more thrilling. This barren world, sculpted solely by time and physics, can still produce features so uncannily crafted they feel meant to be discovered. So while the doorway leads nowhere, it opens a window into something deeper. Our eternal fascination with the line between natural wonder and the stories we project onto the cosmos. Mars doesn't need aliens to be extraordinary. Sometimes erosion does the heavy lifting. The internet went into a frenzy in 2013 when a photo from Curiosity rover revealed what looked unmistakably like a rodent crouching between Martian rocks. Dubbed the Mars rat, this tiny formation had it all: a rounded body, pointy snout, even what appeared to be little ears. For a brief, glorious moment, the idea of a lone space rodent surviving on the red planet seemed almost plausible. But let's pause that sci-fi fantasy for a reality check. What we're actually seeing is a textbook case of pareidolia, the brain's habit of imposing familiar patterns like faces or animals onto random shapes. On Earth, we spot faces in clouds or animals in mountain ranges. Mars, with its wind-sculpted rocks and play of light, serves up these illusions on a cosmic platter. What makes the Mars rat especially fascinating is how closely it mirrors real fossil finds. Compare it to ancient rodent fossils on Earth, say, a 20-million-year-old shrew preserved in volcanic ash, and the resemblance is eerie. That's no accident. Wind erosion on Mars can mimic biological textures almost perfectly, carving rocks into forms that seem deliberately lifelike. Yet even knowing it's just a trick of geology, the Mars rat sticks in our minds. It's a testament to how deeply we're wired to search for life, even in the most barren landscapes. Every mission to Mars carries that hope, not just to study rocks, but to stumble upon something that looks back. And until that day comes, illusions like this remind us why we keep exploring, because sometimes the universe's best magic trick is letting us see what we long to find. Imagine rolling up to a Martian hillside and spotting what looks like a fossilized thigh bone half buried in the dust. That's exactly what happened when a Curiosity rover captured an image of a strikingly familiar shape in 2014. A rock formation so eerily similar to a femur that headlines instantly declared Mars might have once been home to towering creatures. Here's the catch: it's not bone, not even close. Scientists quickly pointed out that Mars lacks the biological processes needed to produce actual skeletal remains. Instead, this was a masterclass in wind erosion's artistic talent. A volcanic rock sculpted over eons by abrasive dust storms into something hauntingly organic. The angles, the texture, even the way it seems to taper at one end, pure coincidence, but a spectacular one. What makes this Martian mirage so compelling is how it plays on our deep-seated instincts. On Earth, spotting bones means life existed. Our brains are hardwired to make that connection, even 62 million miles away. NASA even released a statement gently debunking the femur theory, explaining that while Mars once had water, there's zero evidence it ever hosted large, complex organisms. Yet, lurking beneath that reality is a quieter truth. The fact that wind and time can mimic biology so perfectly means we have to look harder, dig deeper. Every oddly shaped rock could be nature's trick, or someday the real deal. So while this particular bone is just geology's mimicry, it keeps us asking the vital question: if not this one, then where? Some of Mars' most mind-bending illusions don't just trick the eye, they seem to defy physics entirely. Take the infamous floating spoon, captured by Curiosity in 2015, a delicate, handle-like rock formation that appears to hover impossibly above the surface, casting a thin shadow beneath it like a piece of cutlery suspended in midair. At first glance, it looks like someone or something left behind a cosmic dinner setting. The reality is even more fascinating. This isn't some abandoned alien utensil, but a stunning example of wind erosion's sculpting power. Over millennia, Martian dust storms have sandblasted softer rock layers away, leaving behind only the most durable material, in this case, a slender protrusion still anchored to a larger formation at one end. The spoon survives because it's made of harder stuff, while everything around it has slowly vanished. What makes this formation particularly mesmerizing is the angle at which it was photographed. From Curiosity's vantage point, the supporting base blends seamlessly into the terrain, creating that jaw-dropping illusion of levitation. On Earth, we see similar tricks of erosion in places like Utah's Bryce Canyon, where hoodoos, those skinny rock spires, stand like fragile sculptures carved by wind and rain. But Mars takes it further. With lower gravity and bone-dry conditions, delicate formations persist longer than they ever could on our planet. That spoon might look like it's floating today, but give it another 10,000 years of sandblasting winds, and even this hardy remnant could crumble away. So while it's not proof of interplanetary tea parties, this little geological marvel reminds us that nature is the ultimate artist, capable of crafting wonders so precise they look handmade. And somewhere in that paradox lies the real magic of Mars, a world where the simplest forces can create illusions grand enough to make us question everything. Even Star Trek fans couldn't believe their eyes when NASA Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter spotted something straight out of science fiction, a sand dune shaped almost perfectly like the iconic Starfleet insignia. There it was, etched onto the Martian surface as if some cosmic artist had paid tribute to Captain Kirk and crew. Turns out, this wasn't a nod to pop culture, but a brilliant demonstration of Mars' ever-shifting winds. The dune's striking arrowhead shape formed where two crescent-shaped Martian dunes collided, their tails merging into that unmistakable chevron. Wind direction and speed sculpted the rest, carving slopes and curves with precision. It's the same process that creates similar dunes on Earth, just with an accidental Hollywood flair. NASA scientists couldn't resist the comparison, joking about Starfleet's early expeditions to Mars. But beyond the humor lies something genuinely profound. The dune is a snapshot of motion, a fleeting alignment of physics and chance. Martian winds will eventually reshape it, erasing this temporary artwork. That's the real wonder here. Even on a dead world, the landscape is alive with change. So while Vulcans didn't leave a calling card, the universe served up its own wink, proof that sometimes reality mirrors fiction in ways that spark joy. And if that's not a cosmic inside joke, what is? Among Mars' gallery of curious rocks, few have sparked as much debate as the so-called ancient statue spotted by the Opportunity rover in 2010. At first glance, it seemed impossible. A tiny, weathered formation no larger than a thumb, but with contours that vaguely resembled a seated humanoid figure. Some swore they could make out a head, shoulders, even something like folded arms. The internet erupted with theories. Was this a relic of lost Martian artisans? A votive offering left by some long-gone civilization? Geologists, however, saw a different story. Zoom in closer, and the statue becomes a textbook example of how wind, time, and the right lighting can conspire to fool us. The rock's pitted surface, shaped by millennia of abrasive dust storms, created random grooves that just happened to align in a way our brains interpret as deliberate. Earth has its own versions. Think of the Sphinx's erosion patterns or the old man of the mountain cliff that once gazed over New Hampshire. Mars, with its thinner atmosphere and relentless winds, amplifies this effect. What makes this case particularly fascinating is scale. The formation is barely a few centimeters tall, yet the shadows at that exact moment made it loom larger in photos, proof of how perspective can distort reality on a planet without familiar reference points. Scientists point out that if this were truly sculpted, we'd expect symmetry, tool marks, or at least similar artifacts nearby. Instead, it stands alone, a geological Rorschach test in a desert of rust-colored rocks. Still, there's poetry in the persistence of the mystery. Whether wind-carved accident or cosmic prank, this little figure reminds us why Mars feels so tantalizingly close yet endlessly enigmatic. Every mission peels back another layer, but the planet keeps whispering, what if, just once, the shadows aren't lying? Amid the endless rust-colored landscapes of Mars, Curiosity rover once spotted something that stood out like a cosmic jewel, a small, gleaming object catching the sunlight with an almost metallic glint. Among the dust and rubble, this polished, silvery rock looked like it had been dropped onto the red planet from another world. and in a way it had. Scientists quickly recognized it as a meteorite, likely a chunk of nickel and iron that survived its fiery plunge through Mars' atmosphere to rest on the surface. What makes this discovery particularly fascinating isn't just the object itself, but the fact that it exists intact at all. Mars' atmosphere is only about 1% as thick as Earth's, meaning incoming space debris doesn't get shredded or burned up as easily. Instead, these cosmic travelers hit the ground with minimal erosion, preserving their original form for millennia. On Earth, most metallic meteorites weather quickly, corroding under rain, wind, and oxidation. But on Mars, locked in a near-perfect vacuum, they stay smooth and reflective time capsules from the asteroid belt. This particular rock, nicknamed Egg Rock, even showed signs of rigmaglypts, those distinctive thumbprint-like dimples caused by superheated gas during atmospheric entry. The real kicker, this wasn't even the first meteorite found on Mars. Rovers have spotted several over the years, each one a reminder that while we're searching for signs of life, the planet is also collecting souvenirs from the wider solar system. These space rocks aren't just geological curiosities. They're clues about the composition of our cosmic neighborhood, delivered right to our robotic explorer's doorstep. So the next time you picture Mars, don't just imagine a barren desert. Think of it as a celestial landing pad, quietly collecting treasures from the void, each one a gleaming puzzle piece in the grand story of our solar system. One day in 2015, Curiosity rover stumbled upon something that looked like it belonged in a pharaoh's tomb. A small but eerily symmetrical pyramid-shaped rock sitting alone on the Martian surface. With its sharp angles and crisp edges, it seemed almost too precise to be natural. Almost immediately, theories erupted. Could this be a remnant of an ancient Martian civilization? A monument left behind by some long-lost builders. Geologists, however, had a different take. The rock, barely the size of a football, was likely a ventifact, a formation sculpted by relentless wind-blown sand over millions of years. On Earth, we see this in places like Egypt's White Desert, where wind carves rocks into surreal geometric shapes. Mars, with its thin atmosphere and abrasive dust storms, does the same thing, just with even more dramatic results. The key is consistency. Winds blowing from one dominant direction can gradually plane a rock's sides into near-perfect facets, creating that uncanny pyramid effect. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. While wind erosion is the simplest explanation, some researchers point out that the rock's near-flawless symmetry pushes the limits of natural processes. Could there be other forces at play, volcanic activity, seismic shifts, or even the rare chance of a meteorite impact fracturing the rock in just the right way? The truth is, Mars keeps surprising us. What seems impossible one day might become textbook science the next. So while we don't have evidence of pyramid-building aliens yet, this little formation serves as a perfect metaphor for Mars itself. A world where nature's artistry blurs the line between coincidence and intention. Every rock tells a story, and sometimes the most compelling tales are the ones that leave room for wonder. Mars never stops playing tricks on the eyes, and another floating spoon proves it. Years after Curiosity's first utensil-shaped oddity made headlines, the rover spotted a second formation in 2019 that seemed to defy logic even more dramatically. This time, the spoon appeared perfectly balanced in midair, its slender handle stretching out over empty space while the bowl portion hovered like a gravity-defying cup. The illusion was so convincing you'd swear someone had placed it there as a cosmic prank. But once again, the magic lies in perspective and erosion's patient artistry. This spoon isn't floating at all. It's a thin fin of hardened rock still attached to a larger outcrop at one end. Dust and softer layers have eroded away beneath it, leaving that delicate overhang. As for the shadow, a trick of low-angle sunlight, casting just enough darkness underneath to sever the connection visually. What makes this second spoon especially fascinating is how it underscores Mars' talent for crafting repeat performances. The conditions that create these illusions, wind patterns, rock composition, even the planet's low gravity allowing fragile structures to persist, aren't one-offs. They're part of a repeating geological symphony. Earth has its own versions, like Utah's floating rock, but Mars turns these into masterpieces. Without vegetation or weather to obscure them, every wind-sculpted quirk takes center stage. And that's the real lesson here. The more we explore, the more we realize Mars isn't just a planet, it's the solar system's greatest natural illusionist, constantly reminding us that reality is often stranger than the stories we project onto it. Out of all the eerie formations on Mars, few have ignited imaginations like the so-called alien skull. In 2016, a grainy black and white image from Curiosity rover showed a rock that seemed to stare back at us, a hollow-eyed, elongated shape resembling a fossilized cranium, complete with what looked like eye sockets and a jawline. The internet exploded with theories. Was this proof of ancient Martian life, a discarded relic from some lost civilization? Here's the catch: it's barely the size of a golf ball. Zoom in, and the skull transforms into a wind-scoured pebble, its features magnified by shadows and the limitations of early rover cameras. This is pareidolia at its most potent, our brains filling in gaps to create something recognizable from chaos. On Earth, we see it in clouds or toast stains. On Mars, where every rock is alien to us, the effect goes into overdrive. Scientists point out that for this to be an actual fossil, Mars would have needed not just life, but complex multicellular organisms, something no evidence supports yet. The rock's texture, classic volcanic basalt, weathered into that haunting shape by centuries of abrasive dust storms. What makes this illusion stick is how it hits our primal recognition triggers. The curve of a brow, the symmetry of sockets, details just vague enough to feel intentional. But the real lesson here isn't about debunking myths. It's about how exploration evolves. Later rovers, equipped with sharper cameras and spectrometers, see these rocks for what they are, yet the skull endures as a cultural icon. Because buried in the hype is a quiet truth: the day we do find real fossils on Mars, they might not look dramatic at all. They could be microscopic, subtle. Until then, these phantom skulls remind us to keep looking, but to let science, not shadows, lead the way. Stretching across Mars' equator like the weathered hide of some colossal beast, the Medusae Fossae Formation holds one of the planet's most haunting landscapes, a sprawling expanse of ridges so intricately folded, they resemble the cracked bark of an ancient tree. Seen from orbit, this terrain rides across hundreds of miles, its grooves and crests locked in a silent, labyrinthine dance. Scientists believe this surreal texture is the handiwork of ash, not just ordinary dust, but towering deposits from volcanic eruptions so colossal they once blanketed the region in layers hundreds of meters thick. Over billions of years, Mars' relentless winds sandblasted these soft sediments, carving them into the sinuous ridges we see today. It's a process similar to how wind sculpts sandstone into swirling curves in Earth's deserts, but on a scale that dwarfs anything our planet can muster. What makes this tree-bark terrain especially fascinating is what it hides beneath. Radar scans suggest these ash deposits might bury ice-rich layers, potential remnants of a wetter Martian past. Some researchers even speculate that the same volcanic activity that created Medusae Fossae could have fueled hydrothermal systems beneath the surface, creating fleeting pockets where life might have gained a tenuous foothold. But perhaps the most striking detail is how these formations evolve. Unlike Earth, where rain and vegetation quickly obscure such features, Mars preserves them with eerie clarity. Every ridge tells a story of howling winds that have stripped the landscape bare over millennia, a timeline written not in words but in waves of frozen ash. So while this alien bark won't sprout leaves anytime soon, it offers something just as vital, a testament to the raw, sculpting power of time. Mars doesn't just show us another world, it shows us what our own planet might become given enough silence and wind. Mars holds more than just active dunes, it keeps ghostly imprints of its windy past. Scattered across the surface, scientists have found strange crescent-shaped depressions like footprints left by invisible giants. These are ghost dunes, the fossilized remains of ancient sand dunes that stood tall billions of years ago. Unlike the shifting waves of sand we see today, these were frozen in time, filled with sediment, hardened into rock, and then slowly exposed as winds carved away everything around them. What's haunting isn't just their shape, but what they reveal. These hollowed-out shells tell us Mars was once even windier than it is now, with dunes that may have towered hundreds of feet high. The sediment that filled them, often volcanic ash or minerals cemented by water, acted like a mold, preserving their curves long after the original sand blew away. Now all that's left are these negative space echoes, a stark reminder of how landscapes vanish but leave their fingerprints behind. Here's the twist: ghost dunes aren't just relics. They're potential time capsules. On Earth, similar formations trap and preserve microscopic life or chemical traces. If Mars ever hosted life, these hardened dune casts might be ideal spots to look. Their sheltered interiors could have protected delicate evidence from radiation or erosion. So while they look like shadows of the past, ghost dunes might actually point us toward Mars' biggest secrets. They're not just footprints in the sand, they're invitations to dig deeper. At Mars' south pole, the landscape takes on an almost surreal appearance, vast stretches of pitted terrain that look like someone took a cosmic cheese grater to the planet. This is the infamous Swiss cheese terrain, a bizarre honeycomb of depressions carved into layers of carbon dioxide ice. Each hole ranges from a few meters to over 100 meters across, their steep walls and flat floors creating a pattern so uniform, it's hard to believe nature alone is the architect. The secret behind these formations lies in a process called sublimation, where dry ice doesn't melt into liquid but vanishes straight into gas as temperatures shift. During Mars' warmer seasons, sunlight hits the CO2 ice, causing it to sublimate away at the edges of these pits. The result: the holes slowly expand, their walls retreating like a receding shoreline, while fresh frost settles in colder months to partially refill them. It's a cycle that keeps the landscape in constant, eerie transformation. What makes this terrain especially fascinating is how it defies earthly comparisons. While our glaciers melt and flow, Mars' frozen carbon dioxide behaves more like disappearing ink, leaving behind these ghostly hollows. Orbiter images even show the pits changing shape year after year, some merging into larger craters as their walls collapse. Scientists suspect underlying water ice might play a role too, acting like a hidden foundation beneath this volatile CO2 layer. But here's the real kicker: this isn't just a geological curiosity. These pits could be tiny time capsules. As they grow, they expose older layers of ice and dust, offering snapshots of Mars' climate history. Some researchers think probing these holes might reveal clues about past atmospheric shifts or even trapped gases that hint at ancient conditions. So while it may look like a cosmic snack left behind, the Swiss cheese terrain is anything but frivolous. It's a dynamic, ever-changing record of Mars' thin, whispery atmosphere at work, proof that even in the coldest corners of the solar system, nothing ever stays truly still. In 2019, a photo from Mars sparked a firestorm of speculation. A single, brilliant white speck glowing against the rusty terrain like a tiny beacon in the darkness. Conspiracy forums lit up with theories. Was this proof of underground Martian cities, a signal from some hidden intelligence? The truth, as always, is a fascinating mix of cosmic physics and camera quirks. These flashes aren't alien lighthouses, they're cosmic rays, high-energy particles from deep space slamming into the rover's camera sensors. Think of it like interstellar static. When these charged particles hit the detector, they create tiny bursts of light in the image, random, fleeting, but sometimes perfectly aligned to look intentional. Earth-bound astronomers see this too, especially in long-exposure space photos, where cosmic ray streaks resemble scratch marks across the stars. What makes the Mars example so compelling is the context. Against a landscape where every shadow feels mysterious, a single bright pixel takes on outsized meaning. Scientists can usually spot these artifacts by their telltale signs: unnatural sharpness, lack of surrounding effects, or appearing in just one frame of a sequence. But our brains, wired to seek patterns, often leap past the mundane explanation straight to the spectacular. Here's the kicker: while cosmic rays are the likely culprit, Mars does have real light phenomena. Dust devils can catch the sun just right, creating fleeting glints, and frost-covered rocks sometimes reflect light with mirror-like intensity. Even meteors streak through the thin atmosphere, though they'd leave trails, not single dots. So next time you spot a mysterious Martian glow, remember, the universe is full of natural magic. Sometimes the most extraordinary explanations are the ordinary ones playing tricks on us across millions of miles. While Mars may seem like a dusty wasteland today, some landscapes tell a different story entirely, one written in flowing water rather than wind. Nowhere is this more striking than Jezero Crater, where NASA's Perseverance rover has been exploring what scientists believe was once the site of a bustling river delta. From orbit, the terrain looks like a dried-up highway system, snaking channels branching out across the crater floor, their curves so precise they could be blueprints for ancient waterways. Zoom in and the evidence gets even more compelling. Layered sedimentary rocks, some stacked like pancakes, reveal where water once slowed and dropped its heavy mineral cargo. These aren't just random piles, they're geological play-by-plays of how water levels rose and fell over millennia. In some spots, rounded pebbles scattered across the surface tell of currents strong enough to tumble and smooth stone, something only possible with sustained liquid flow. What makes Jezero special isn't just that water was here, but how much it mirrors Earth's own river systems. The crater's delta structure, with its fan-shaped sediment deposits, mirrors places like the Mississippi Delta or the Nile's vanished branches. Even the chemistry hints at familiarity. Clays and carbonates spotted here often form in watery environments that could have been hospitable to life. Yet perhaps the most haunting detail is the timescale. These riverbeds didn't dry up overnight. They likely shifted from steady flows to intermittent trickles over millions of years as Mars' atmosphere thinned and its water escaped to space or retreated underground. That slow fade makes Jezero a time capsule of climate collapse, a world losing its lifeblood grain by grain. So while Perseverance searches for signs of past microbial life, the land itself is already talking. Every layered cliff and pebble-strewn channel whispers the same truth: Mars wasn't always red. Once it may have been blue, and if we listen closely, its rocks might just tell us how long that aquatic dream lasted. Among the many uncanny formations dotting Mars' surface, few have stirred curiosity quite like what appear to be clusters of mushrooms sprouting from the rust-colored soil. These rounded, bulbous rocks, some perched on slender stems, others clustered like coral, aren't proof of extraterrestrial gardening, but they are a masterclass in nature's talent for mimicry. The leading explanation points to concretions, hardened mineral deposits that form when water percolates through porous rock, gradually cementing particles into dense, rounded lumps. On Earth, we see this in places like Utah's Moqui marbles or the spherical, cannonball concretions of North Dakota. Mars' version likely formed under similar conditions billions of years ago, when liquid water still flowed across its surface. Over time, erosion stripped away the softer surrounding material, leaving these resilient orbs behind like cosmic marbles scattered in the dust. But there's another possibility: volcanic bomb impacts. When molten rock erupts into the air, it can solidify mid-flight into aerodynamic shapes before slamming into the ground. Some of Mars' mushroom rocks bear the pitted, dimpled textures typical of these volcanic projectiles, suggesting fiery origins rather than watery ones. What makes these formations so tantalizing is how they blur lines between geology and biology. Their shapes, so reminiscent of Earth's fungi, play tricks on our expectations. Scientists caution that while Mars may have once been habitable, these rocks are purely mineral. Yet their existence tells a deeper story, a planet where ancient processes, now silent, left behind puzzles just ambiguous enough to keep us questioning. So while we won't find Martian truffles anytime soon, these rocks are still treasures not of life, but of a world that sculpted its own strange beauty long before we arrived to admire it. In the shadows of a Martian rock outcrop, something seemingly lurked, a clawed, crab-like form that sent the internet into a frenzy when Curiosity rover snapped its image in 2015. With what appeared to be segmented limbs and a rounded body, the Mars crab monster became an instant sensation, fueling wild speculation about hidden creatures dodging rover cameras under cover of darkness. But the truth lies in the interplay of light and digital noise. Low-resolution images taken in dim lighting can create visual artifacts, pixels that blur together, exaggerating edges or textures until random shapes resemble familiar objects. Here, the crab is likely just a wind-worn rock fragment, its silhouette warped by shadows and camera grain into something biologically implausible up close. Scientists point out that Mars' thin atmosphere offers no hiding place for large organisms, and no rover has ever recorded movement or tracks suggesting anything crawls beneath the dust. What makes this case fascinating isn't the debunking, but the technical insight it offers. Rover cameras, while advanced, still face limitations, especially in low light. Dust particles can scatter illumination unevenly, while compression algorithms sometimes sharpen random patterns into false detail. It's a reminder that even our robotic explorers see Mars through a lens that occasionally plays tricks. Yet beyond the hype, there's a kernel of scientific value. The crab rock, mundane as it is, sits in Gale Crater, a region rich in layered sediments that do hold real mysteries. Every odd shape, whether optical illusion or not, prompts closer inspection. So while this particular crustacean is pure fantasy, the curiosity it sparked is very real, proof that Mars keeps us questioning not just what we see, but how we see it. Deep in Mars' northern lowlands lies a site that defies expectations, a pristine, circular expanse of ice so perfectly preserved. It looks like a giant skating rink carved into the planet's rusty skin. This is Korolev Crater, home to one of the most striking reservoirs of water ice in the solar system. Stretching over 50 miles wide and nearly 2/3 of a mile deep, its icy floor isn't just a seasonal dusting, it's a permanent fixture, a frozen time capsule shielded by the crater's own clever physics. What keeps this ice from vanishing into Mars' thin atmosphere? The crater's unique shape acts like a natural cold trap. When air flows over the ice, it sinks into the bowl like depression and chills, creating a protective layer of frigid gas that hovers above the frozen surface. This self-sustaining cycle prevents sublimation, locking the ice in a perpetual deep freeze. It's like nature's own refrigeration system, one that's kept this reservoir intact for millions, possibly billions of years. The sheer scale of Korolev's ice sheet is staggering. If melted, it could fill over 5,000 Olympic-sized swimming pools, a tantalizing thought for future explorers. But what's equally fascinating is the ice's purity. Unlike Earth's glaciers, which are littered with debris, Korolev's ice appears remarkably clean, a glittering sheet uninterrupted by dust or rock. Orbiter scans suggest it's nearly pure water ice, with only trace amounts of Martian dust mixed in. Yet the real magic of Korolev isn't just in its existence, it's in what it represents. This isn't some fleeting frost patch. It's proof that Mars can preserve its water in perfect stillness, defying time and erosion. For scientists, that raises thrilling possibilities. If ice this pristine survives here, what other hidden caches might lurk beneath the surface? And for dreamers, it paints a poetic picture, a silent, glassy oasis waiting in the cold, daring us to come and read its frozen story. One of Mars' most striking geographical quirks lies in the Cydonia region, the same area famous for the face, where an enormous whale-shaped depression stretches across the landscape like a fossilized leviathan. This curved, elongated basin, measuring nearly a mile long, appears so eerily organic that it's hard not to imagine some ancient sea creature forever imprinted into the rusty soil. Geologists see two compelling explanations for this bizarre formation. The first points to collapsed lava tubes tunnels once carved by flowing molten rock that later caved in, leaving behind a hollowed-out trench. On Earth, similar features exist in places like Hawaii's Volcanoes National Park, where the ground above drained lava channels collapses into snaking scars. Mars, with its history of volcanic activity, could easily host such remnants on a grander scale. The second theory suggests an impact origin, a meteorite strike that left behind an oblong crater, its edges softened over eons by wind and dust. Unlike the crisp, bowl-shaped craters scattered across Mars, this one's smoother contours hint at immense age, as if the planet itself has slowly erased the violence of its birth. What makes the whale particularly fascinating is how it plays with scale. From orbit, its shape feels deliberate, almost sculpted, but up close, it's just another example of Mars' talent for turning geology into art. The formation sits near other puzzling landmarks, like the infamous face, inviting speculation about whether these features share a common origin or if their proximity is just another cosmic coincidence. While it's not proof of Martian oceans or lost sea creatures, this basin serves as a reminder: Mars doesn't need life to feel alive. Its landscapes breathe with the ghosts of fire, ice, and time whispering stories written not in words, but in shapes only the patient can decipher. At Mars' polar regions, spring brings a spectacle unlike anything on Earth: vast fields of sprawling, spider-like patterns etched across the landscape. From orbit, these formations look like dark, spindly legs radiating outward in intricate webs, some stretching hundreds of feet across. But these aren't the tracks of some giant Martian arachnid. They're the result of a seasonal dance between ice and gas that plays out every year. The magic begins with slabs of carbon dioxide ice that build up during Mars' frigid winters. When sunlight returns in spring, the ice doesn't melt, it sublimes, transforming directly from solid to gas. This trapped gas builds pressure beneath the ice until it fractures the surface, bursting through cracks and jetting upward in geyser-like plumes. The escaping gas carries dark dust from below, spraying it across the ice in those telltale streaks. Over time, this process carves branching channels that converge at central vents, leaving behind what looks like a field of shadowy spiders frozen mid-crawl. What makes this phenomenon so mesmerizing is its precision. Unlike Earth's unpredictable weather patterns, Mars' thin atmosphere and stable seasons allow these formations to recur with almost clockwork regularity. Orbiting spacecraft have even captured time-lapse sequences showing the spiders spreading further each day as sunlight creeps across the poles. But the real surprise: this isn't just a surface-level quirk. The same process might explain other Martian mysteries, like the strange, fan-shaped dark spots seen in polar dunes. Some scientists suspect these spiders could be venting greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, subtly influencing Mars' climate cycles. So while no eight-legged creatures are lurking at the poles, these formations are alive in their own way. A reminder that even on a seemingly dead world, the right combination of ice, sunlight, and time can create something eerily lifelike. And for explorers, they're a tantalizing hint. If Mars can still sculpt such delicate, dynamic patterns today, what other seasonal wonders are waiting to be uncovered? While exploring Mars' ancient river delta, NASA, a Perseverance rover, stumbled upon something that glittered like buried treasure: a lone boulder reflecting sunlight with an almost golden sheen against the rusty terrain. This wasn't fool's gold or some alien artifact, but a geological oddity that stood out even on a planet full of surprises. Dubbed Golden Rock by the mission team, this striking formation is likely a relic of Mars' volcanic past, a dense, metallic rich stone polished to a shine over eons by relentless sandblasting winds. Unlike Earth, where rain and vegetation weather rocks unevenly, Mars' arid environment acts like a natural sandpaper factory, smoothing surfaces into mirror-like finishes. The rover's instruments revealed high concentrations of olivine and pyroxene, minerals often forged in fiery volcanic processes, suggesting this boulder might have once been part of a much larger molten flow. But here's what makes it truly fascinating: its isolation. Most rocks in Jezero crater are sedimentary, shaped by water. Finding this volcanic outlier means it traveled, either ejected by an ancient impact or carried by some long-vanished force before being abandoned on the delta's edge like a cosmic keepsake. What secrets does it hold? Scratches on its surface could tell us about wind patterns that sculpted it, while its mineral makeup might trace back to eruptions billions of years ago. For scientists, it's a time capsule, proof that Mars didn't just have water, it had fire too, and for the rest of us, it's a reminder that even in the silence of space, a single glinting rock can whisper stories of the planet's turbulent youth. Among the countless mysteries etched into Mars' surface, few are as hypnotic as the sprawling, honeycomb patterns found in certain sedimentary basins. These intricate hexagonal cracks, stretching across the terrain like nature's own mosaic, aren't random fractures, they're a geological cipher left behind by the planet's ancient climate. Scientists believe these formations emerged from a rhythmic dance between water and drought. When muddy sediment repeatedly soaked and dried, perhaps due to seasonal floods or evaporating shallow lakes, the contracting material split into polygonal networks, much like cracked mud in a desert playa on Earth. But Mars took this process further. Over eons, wind etched these patterns deeper, preserving them in stone as the surrounding softer material eroded away. What makes these honeycombs more than just eye-catching curiosities is what they imply. Their uniformity suggests predictable wet-dry cycles, not one-off flooding, but a stable, recurring climate pattern that could have lasted millennia. On Earth, similar conditions often create niches where microbial life thrives. Could Mars' cracks have once harbored tiny organisms in their mineral-rich crevices? Yet there's another twist. Some hexagons align in ways that hint at underground water movement, their shapes warped by hidden flows. It's as if the surface isn't just recording ancient weather, it's mapping whispers of subterranean plumbing. For researchers, these geometric scars are more than fossils of a bygone era. They're a roadmap to understanding how Mars transitioned from a world with seasons and storms to the frozen desert we see today. Every polygon is a time capsule, locking in secrets of an era when the planet's heartbeat still pulsed with the rhythm of water. Mars holds yet another gravity-defying spectacle, a boulder frozen mid-fall, seemingly floating above the surface as if suspended by invisible strings. This is no magic trick, but one of the planet's most striking examples of wind erosion's patience. The floating boulder perches atop a slender pedestal, its massive form balanced so delicately it looks like a breath could send it tumbling. The science behind this illusion is both simple and awe-inspiring. Over countless millennia, relentless Martian winds have sandblasted the softer rock beneath the boulder, grain by grain, leaving only the most resistant material intact. The boulder itself, tougher than its surroundings, acted like a natural umbrella shielding the pillar beneath from erosion while everything around it slowly dissolved into dust. It's a process seen on Earth in places like Utah's Goblin Valley, but Mars' thinner atmosphere and weaker gravity allow these fragile structures to persist far longer. What makes this formation so mesmerizing isn't just its precariousness, but what it reveals about Mars' timeline. That boulder could have been sitting there for millions of years, an unmoving witness to how the planet's weather shapes its landscape one microscopic scrape at a time. Unlike Earth, where rain or quakes would have toppled it long ago, Mars preserves these fleeting moments in geological amber, and here's the kicker: this boulder isn't alone. Orbiting spacecraft have spotted dozens of similar formations scattered across the planet, each one a snapshot of erosion's sculpting power. Some pedestals are so slender they defy logic, their tops wider than their bases. Others appear to lean at impossible angles, frozen in the act of surrender to gravity's pull. So while it might look like a cosmic balancing act, this floating rock is really a lesson in persistence. A reminder that even in stillness, Mars is always changing, just on a timescale that makes human history feel like a blink. And somewhere out there, another boulder is waiting for its turn to hover, just as the winds beneath it whisper, "Not today." Nestled on the slopes of Arsia Mons, one of Mars' towering volcanoes, lies a hole so perfectly round it looks like it was drilled straight into the planet's crust. This isn't just another crater, it's a gaping void, a pitch-black pit surrounded by untouched terrain. When NASA Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter first spotted it, scientists immediately knew this wasn't an impact site. No ejector, no blast radius, just a sheer drop into darkness. The leading theory: a collapsed skylight, a section of roof that once covered an underground lava tube. On Earth, we see these in places like Hawaii's volcanoes, where molten rock once flowed beneath the surface, leaving behind hollow tunnels. When part of the ceiling gives way, it creates these dramatic openings. But on Mars, the scale is staggering. This particular pit measures over 50 meters across, wide enough to swallow an entire football field. Peer into its shadows, and you're staring into a subterranean world untouched by sunlight for billions of years. What makes this hole more than just a geological curiosity is its potential. Underground lava tubes, shielded from Mars' harsh radiation and extreme temperature swings, could be ideal shelters for future human explorers. Some researchers even speculate these tunnels might contain ice deposits, trapped water from Mars' distant past, preserved in the eternal cold of the planet's depths. Yet for all its promise, this pit remains an enigma. Why is it so perfectly circular when most collapse features are irregular? Could smaller, hidden entrances lurk nearby? And just how deep does it go? Orbiter images can't see into the abyss. Only future missions, perhaps equipped with drones or rovers designed for cavern exploration, might reveal what waits below. So while it's not a gateway to some lost Martian civilization, this hole could be something just as valuable: a natural refuge carved by ancient fire, waiting for the next chapter of exploration to begin. The universe has a way of offering shelter in the unlikeliest places. We just have to be bold enough to step inside. While much of Mars appears frozen in time, some parts of the planet are surprisingly active, like the towering dust devils that snake across its surface, leaving ghostly trails in their wake. These spinning columns of wind and dust can reach heights of 5 miles taller than Mount Everest, and when rovers capture them in action, it's like watching a phantom dance across the rusty plains. Unlike Earth's smaller, short-lived dust devils, Martian versions thrive in the planet's thin atmosphere, where low air pressure allows them to grow massive while maintaining delicate, swirling structures. Sunlight heats the ground unevenly, creating pockets of rising warm air that twist into vortices as cooler air rushes in to replace it. The result: a self-sustaining whirlwind that can travel for miles, hoisting dust high into the sky and scouring the terrain beneath like an invisible broom. What makes these dust devils more than just atmospheric quirks are the clues they leave behind. Their trails, dark, serpentine streaks, reveal where they've vacuumed up brighter surface dust, exposing darker soil underneath. Over time, these tracks crisscross the landscape like graffiti, offering scientists a way to study wind patterns and erosion without needing a weather station. But the real marvel is how long these marks last. On Earth, rain or vegetation would erase them quickly, On Mars, they can linger for years, some even decades, creating a slowly shifting map of wind activity. Rovers have even recorded dust devils passing nearby, their faint shadows gliding silently across the ground like wandering spirits. So while Mars may lack the roaring storms of Jupiter or the methane rains of Titan, it has its own quiet dynamism. These towering whirlwinds are more than just weather, they are artists, tirelessly redrawing the planet's surface one spin at a time. And if you listen closely to the whispers of their trails, they might just tell us where the wind will take us next. On a planet where towering volcanoes and vast canyons dominate, sometimes the smallest discoveries spark the biggest smiles. Case in point, the so-called garden gnome of Mars, a tiny, weathered rock spotted by the Curiosity rover that looks uncannily like a cheerful little statue peeking out from the dust. With its rounded hat, slightly protruding nose, and even what appears to be a slumped posture, this formation seems less like geology and more like a cosmic prank. Scientists chuckle at the comparison, but they also see it as a textbook example of how relentless wind erosion can sculpt rocks into whimsical shapes. Over millennia, gusts of abrasive dust have sandblasted this stone into its current form, chiseling away softer layers while leaving behind just enough structure to tickle our imaginations. It's the same process that creates hoodoos on Earth, those quirky rock spires in places like Bryce Canyon, only on Mars. The thinner atmosphere lets these fragile forms persist far longer. What makes the gnome rock truly special isn't just its shape, but what it says about us. Humans are wired to seek the familiar, to turn random patterns into faces, animals, or in this case, a backyard decoration. Mars, with its lack of earthly references, becomes the ultimate Rorschach test. Every mission seems to deliver at least one of these delightful illusions, from floating spoons to thigh bones, as if the planet knows we need a little humor amid the science. Yet beneath the charm lies a deeper truth. These playful projections are how we cope with the unknown. Turning a rock into a gnome isn't just fun, it's a way of taming the alien, making a distant world feel just a little more like home. So while the gnome is pure geology, it's also a mirror. Mars doesn't need little statues to be magical, it simply is. And sometimes the best discoveries remind us that wonder lies not just in the rocks but in the stories we tell about them. From the haunting face on Mars to the glittering meteorites strewn across its surface, we've journeyed through 30 of the red planet's most mystifying discoveries, each one a testament to how science and imagination dance together in the cosmos. Whether it's ghostly dunes whispering of ancient winds or volcanic pits leading to unseen caverns, Mars never fails to blur the line between geological fact and the stories we long to tell. These finds remind us why exploration matters, not just for answers, but for the questions that keep us reaching further. Maybe the next rover will uncover something even more startling, or perhaps the greatest Martian mystery is still hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right angle of sunlight to reveal itself. So what's your favorite Martian enigma? Was it the floating spoon defying gravity, the dragon-scaled terrain, or something else entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear which discovery fired up your curiosity the most. And if you're hungry for more cosmic mysteries, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. The universe is full of wonders and we're just getting started. Until next time, keep looking up because out there, even the rocks have stories to tell.